Okay, Ramon, last time we discussed shortly an idea which I launched about defunding the Pentagon. What I want to do today is develop that idea and get your critical comments on it. Now, the idea came from basically the question, how do you bring about fundamental changes in a society like the USA? We're not talking abstractly about all societies. No, look at the USA, which is the imperial power of the world today, which has 800 military bases across the world, which acts as the self-appointed cop of the empire, supported by West. So the two main parties in the United States, who for centuries or what, a century or so, have been vying for political power, the Democrats and the Republicans, although there have been, especially in the 30s, social movement that tried to generate a political party alternative in different ways in the United States. Most of the social movements basically go back to the Democratic Party as an instrument of change. Um, so we could have discussions on how do you bring about social changes through a political system which is organized on the basis of parliamentary democracy. And is it possible that you get a revolutionary situation in which that system breaks down and opens the possibility, let's say, for a revolutionary situation in which a revolutionary party could take power in the United States? Could be, you know. That is the classical Marxist analysis of waiting for a crisis to develop like that and having a revolutionary vanguard party preparing for it. Now, with the lessons of the social movements, the ecological movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the women's movement, the LGBT movements of the last centuries, the farmers' movement, the Chicanos, you know, the US had a lot of the civil rights movement, a lot of these movements. We could leave the organizational problem for now and focus on the content of the social movement. What are they fighting for? Then you could have two ways to look at the content. One is through a political program. So what you do is you draw up a political program with certain demands. You could say, for example, we want nationalization, we want abolishment of the market economy and a central planned economy. All these things you could put in a demand, like the classical Communist Party used to do 8 years ago. You could do that. And then wonder whether that would resonate with the masses in a revolutionary situation where there's a crisis, and you hope that people will think that this is the right solution. There's another way where you don't formulate a whole program, but you formulate certain key demands that act as a propeller for generating the psychological and emotional force in social movements to develop. People have a focus point, and what happens if they protest is they will link it up with other issues, and sooner or later we'll have to think about the question of power. How does this social movement impact powers? Now, the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States had the slogan, defund the police. And it sounded radical, but basically it wanted to divert the funds from police to social communities but didn't tackle the question of do you want to abolish the whole security system linked to police? Or do you want to replace it with another form of security, community police, or whatever you have? These are, at least I haven't seen detailed plans about that. But it did bring about the fact that you challenges with the slogan the power of police. You say that we look at the funding as an instrument to challenge the authority, the way the police functions and works, so that it can kill black men, mostly black men, without accountability. So that is the thing you are putting on the plate. Now, with the slogan defund the pentagon as a slogan where social movement link the wars, the eternal ongoing wars of the United States with the social transformation of the United States. The funds that go into the nuclear arsenal, into the 800 military bases, into the never-ending wars in Afghanistan now, in the Middle East, into the economic wars of boycott. Why not say those funds should be put into healthcare, housing, free education, etc. in the United States? Now, if you put that forward, obviously you will get a backlash, and people who bring out this and social movement to bring it out should be prepared for that backlash and deal with it. Obviously, the first one is the media, which will say you are agents of the US or China or Iran or whatever, that wants to weaken the military might of the United States. So you have to have an answer to this. And I think we should bring in people who are normally not the classical activists, which are artists. For example, if you listen to John Lennon's songs, Imagine, or Give Peace a Chance, they resonate to a certain segment of population. Give peace just means, another world, a better world is possible. That's the idea. There's a better world possible than what we have now. And then you go into how is it possible that we live in this world? How is it possible that we live in a world where you could have 8,000 nuclear weapons that could kill humanity 1,000 times? What kind of crazy world are we living in? And the people who questions this are often seen as softies, religious people, people who think that the better world is possible by living in love and friendship and taking those values and argue that we want to live with the Russians in peace in America. We want to live with the Chinese in peace. So we don't want them to be our enemies. We want them to be our friends. So what do? We set up trajectories to build friendship between peoples, visits, talks. And one thing I found interesting in power is the Guaido thing of the Venezuela. How was it possible that somebody goes to a square, calls himself the president of a country, other country recognize him, and then suddenly part of the state function is transferred to that person, this individual. It is possible because imperial power backs him, so that you could take the gold reserves in the United States and put it under his control, or the oil reserves. Now, let's say you have a social movement in the United States that says foreign policy is not a matter of the State Department only. It's also a matter of the people. So the people in social movement discuss how do we build friendship with China. Let's take China or Iran or those areas where military confrontation is on the board in Venezuela. How do we build this? Is that we declare ourselves the people that are willing to sit with the government of China and discuss how to build relationship between the people, the friendship relationship between the people and of the United States and the people of, let's say, Iran. Suppose people in the United States would form something and say, we think that our government is not capable of building love and friendship. We think we can do that. And we approach Putin and say, Putin, we want to talk to you. Why do you want to attack us? What do you want from us? You know, and start that conversation. And if those states would acknowledge that they deal not only with the State Department, but are willing to deal with people who think that they represent the people of the United States and build trajectories for building friendship, which could start with you discuss with the United States the level of the agreement regarding diminishing uh, uh, nuclear weapons, whereas you can discuss what are nuclear weapons needed for Russia and for we could discuss the philosophical, moral, ethical, political implication of this. So if the slogan of defund the Pentagon comes along with a trajectory of decolonizing the mind and argue that the media is part of this machinery of creating uh, 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 the tensions and uh, uh, regarding one another as an enemy is part of the media strategy. And you say the social movements of now accuse the media of their role and want to set up a different trajectory and wants that the governments not deal only with the formal state of the United States, but also with the informal states which arises out of people arguing and saying we want to set up trajectories for friendship. Now, this is a wild idea, but we live in wild times. So that I think we should go beyond the normal framework of thinking in order to develop ideas how to push forward the social movements for change. So this is what I want to say as an introduction, Ramon. Let me hear your critical comment on it.
Well, last time in our video conversation, we put forward this idea of the defunding the Defense Department, right? Defunding militarism in the US, not just defunding the police, which is a very important issue. The thing structural in the USA, let's put it this way, the difficulty of that is that USA has been deindustrialized. That is, most of the manufacturing activities of the USA have gone abroad. I mean, they go to places where they can pay cheaper, cheap labor force, cheap cost of production, and so on. Okay, so this is a process that has happened also in Europe in a way that is called the deindustrialization process and the movement towards service economy in the first world. Okay. The service economy is focused fundamentally on administrating and managing the global transnational companies' investments. And so you have a lot of banking and services to headquarters of transnational companies and a lot of marketing of the products produced elsewhere that are, brought into the U.S. market and sold at higher prices than what it costs, and so on. So these companies are making a big amount of money. This has created structurally a situation where most of the jobs in the USA are in the service economy, manufacturing jobs, those that still exist are, they have reduced dramatically, and the people doing those jobs are fundamentally migrants, most of them illegal migrants from Mexico, Central America, and China. They smuggle migrants to work in those sweatshops, who are illegal in global cities such as Los Angeles, New York City, and other cities of the USA. And so there are many sweatshops there doing this kind of jobs. And so what happened is that with the decline of the USA, with the fact that they don't have productive investments, that's why you have a lot of financial speculation in moments of crisis like the hegemonic crisis and an economic crisis in the world system, like the book of Giovanni Arrighi, The Long 20th Century, have shown. In those moments, there is a lot of financial speculation because financial capital withdraw from material production because a lot of their activities in material production are not profitable. So they are basically withdrawing from that, and whatever investment they have in material production is elsewhere, in Mexico, China, wherever there are sweatshops, they can super exploit labor from the third world at a lower cost. And so I'm going over these things just to say that there is, with this decline, there's been a shift in the way capitalist accumulation works at the center of empire. Before, they will have a strong industrial base in key industries that is not there anymore. So what is left as productive industrial activities in the USA is mostly military industries. That's what is left here. And what is going on, there is a fusion between financial capital and military industry in the USA. And because the situation is of the economy is on a, going down, not, it's obvious today, but it's been going down for the last 30, 40 years. There's been, since the crisis in the mid-70s on, what you have is a slow decline in the long term of the capitalist world economy and a decline of US empire. And today it's very obvious. I mean, we are in a Great Depression. USA is the epicenter of that Great Depression. US have lost its hegemony at a world scale. US have lost the economic competition with China. I mean, we could go over the list. But what they're doing then in this decline is, they're using the US state government, the budget of the US empire, of the US government, as the way to make profits through creating what is called the military industrial complex that have been there for a long time. But the military industrial complex have become now more and more, bigger and more important in the US economy. What I say bigger is that now there are many industries that, whatever is left in the USA, that are profiting by aligning themselves with the military industrial complex, like, cloth industry, or, things that were, in a sense, basically gone from the US and gone elsewhere to third world countries. Those are left here get a lot of contracts. And what they are doing in the last 50 years is to, if there is no war, they will invent a war. Because what they do is that they empty the warehouse of bombs in a country. If you look, the USA have increased the bombs thrown in wars over a period of 60 years. If you look at the Korean War, they throw more bombs in the 3 years of the Korean War than all the bombs thrown in World War II. In the Vietnam War, they throw more bombs than all the bombs thrown in Korean War. Then you go to the 1 month Iraq Gulf, Persian Gulf War in 91, in 1 month or a month and a half, and they throw more bombs than all the bombs they throw in Vietnam, in Iraq. If you go to the Afghan War and then the Iraqi War, they throw more bombs that they have thrown in all the wars before, okay? In all of the war before. You sum all the bombs thrown before, and they've done more bombing in those countries in the last 20 years than anything they've done before. So what they do is that they empty the warehouse of bombs, and then they pass the bill to the US federal government to fund again a production of more bombs. This is not only happening with bombs. This is happening with all military industrial complex that includes food supply to the soldiers, that includes uniforms, clothes, that includes coffee machines, to the military bases, that includes, you name it. It's just a huge industry. And how do they profit? Since they cannot compete internationally anymore, because they cannot compete with China, they cannot compete with European countries such as Germany and so on. What they do is that then they get the contracts from the US government. If you watch carefully, the Bush administration gave the contract to 70 companies, 70 companies who got all the contracts for Iraq and Afghanistan. And all these 70 without public bidding, okay? Listen to this, without public bidding. And it happened that the 70 companies were the companies who funded the electoral campaign of George Bush Jr., okay? In the 2 electoral processes he participated. So 2000 and 2004. So you see now a fusion, and they're doing this at the expense of pushing the federal government, the empire, into bankruptcy. That is, they don't care. Their logic is to make profit today, and they don't care in the long-term interest of the empire. They care about their own profits, their own money, and they are, in a sense, taking the state, the government, to bankruptcy in a big way. So the contradiction here is, on the one hand, you have that it's very obvious as a demand, defund the military industrial company, defund the defense department, okay? It's very obvious that the resources are taking the country into bankruptcy, are taking away resources from the rest of the population for the needs of the population in the USA. So there's a contradiction there between the needs of the population in terms of housing, employment, income, education, in terms of healthcare and so on. You know that in the USA, there's no public educational system, there's no public health system, there's no public housing system, and therefore the law of the jungle is what prevails. So a lot of people here in this country are suffering the consequences. And so that creates a social base for this demand that is it's a very important social base. On the other hand, you have a lot of people in this country who have jobs, and the jobs depend on US warfare. This is where you get the workers' aristocracy of the USA. Today, in the past, the workers' aristocracy was in the automobile industry, in the steel industry, and things like this. Now that's over. Now the workers' aristocracy, the white workers, are based on industries that profit from war. And that's not only the ones producing the bullets or the Air Force airplanes or the tanks. Okay, these are also companies producing coffee machine, producing uniforms, producing, I mean, the most secondary thing you can imagine that are living off the contracts from the Department of Defense. And that's a social base of working class people in this country that are opposed completely to any kind of defunding of the Defense Department, because a lot of these people are living off these war adventures. If there's no war, the Pentagon will invent a war because they need wars to keep justifying the huge budget and the increase of the budget of the USA. So the contradiction is here, is between most of the people, which are the majority, that are not benefiting from this because the companies that benefit from this are, in a sense, a small number compared to the rest of how many people they hire. But at the same time, they have a lobby of working classes, which is also huge. We're talking about millions of jobs. Okay, we're not talking about a few millions or anything like that. We're talking about big numbers. Although the majority of people are not there benefiting from this, there is a huge, huge base here of millions and millions of jobs that are depending directly or indirectly from this kind of warfare of US empire elsewhere. So I'm saying this because I agree with you completely that this is the way to go, and that defund the police and defund the Defense Department should be a demand that should be pushed forward together. But at the same time, we need to understand the material social forces and dynamics of this country to understand also the moment you go into a struggle like this, in terms of, to understand the challenges you have in front of you. Because what they're going to do is to manipulate in the public opinion big time the population, making them believe that we need protection. They always put this forward, this idea about defense, protection, the world is crazy, the people here are in an insecure environment in the world. The only way we can have security is by having a strong military force, and so on. This is the rhetoric, although we know very, very, very well that the whole thing is not about defense, it's about offense. That is, they are in the offensive because what they do is imperialist warfare. And so even though a lot of these wars in the last 20 years are linked to oil fields and resources they want to grab, at the same time, we need to understand that capital accumulation is now, in a sense, destroying the imperial state, because it's leading that imperial state into bankruptcy. And this is an issue that has to be put forward in the debate about defunding the Defense Department. That the way this works now is that all these companies, what they do is that they take the resources from contracts with US government and leading the country into bankruptcy. There are trillions, with the letter T as Tom, trillion of dollars spent in the last 20 years in all these warfare adventures elsewhere. And these trillions of dollars are there right now as a debt of the USA, of the federal government of USA, trillions of dollars. So the country is bankrupt. And it's bankrupt in great part because of this fusion of financial capital and military industrial complex in the US, funded through the US Defense Department. Look, if you look at the budget of the Defense Department, you could multiply now by 4 or 5 since the end of the Cold War. So how did they manage to put forward an increase in military budget in a context where the Cold War is over? Well, they did it by creating and inventing new enemies. And at some point it was, and they've been pushing the Muslim, as the, war of, clash of civilization, Muslims, and so on, and they make Muslim the main enemy. That is now, in these days, is not flying that much, and now they're trying to find new ways, and now they're making China, Russia, stuff like this as the main enemy. And so now all this stuff are now, but they need to find enemies to keep justifying the increase in the budget. I mean, and look at Trump. Trump was a president that was against war and all of that, but he delivered the largest budget for the Defense Department of the USA in its history, the largest budget in history. And even though he was supposedly not going for wars and things like this. So it tells you how powerful this lobby is. And I think that's why I think that the second part of your argument, which I find it interesting and should be taken in the future, but it's not the second part of your argument about delivering kind of a popular foreign policy, skipping the State Department and so on. I find that very difficult at this moment. First, because there's not a social movement right now to sustain that, okay? You will have to build first a movement along the lines of defund the police, defund the Defense Department, and make it very strong to then move forward in this other direction. Look, there's been what you're proposing has been done by Black leaders in the USA. You have many Black leaders going and meeting with Gaddafi, going and meeting with Saddam Hussein, going and meeting with Russia, with Cuba, with you name it. And we can go over the list of names: Jesse Jackson, Louis Farrakhan. I mean, people from different tendencies of the Black movement, they've done this. They've gone there with a peaceful message, and they tried to skip the State Department, but without a strong backing from the majority of American people, that doesn't work. You see, they always, they just ignore them. They just skip them in the broad picture. The U.S. empire always skipped them. There's been all these initiatives at moments where we know they're going to invade Iraq or they're going to invade Libya, things like this. You have Black leaders flying there and making a symbolic statement about, not invading this country, peaceful relations and so on, and they still go and invade the countries, So this is where I think that what you're proposing is interesting, but should be taken later. And the priority should be building a movement along the lines of these two demands and put them together, because if you only do one, it's not enough. In order to put forward a movement that will touch the question of imperialism, you need to have this demand of defunding the US Defense Department. Otherwise, it becomes some kind of the defund the police is not enough. You need to, if not, you become like a movement co-opted by US empire. You will be trying to improve your situation within the empire without destroying the empire, without questioning the empire. You see, and so the only way to do that is put the two demands together. This is where this is one of the weaknesses of the Black Lives Matter, that even though they put forward the defund the police, they still haven't come with this other demand that I think is crucial for moving away from this version of white supremacy that is now in power of liberal multiculturalism. That is a way of, it's a white supremacy strategy to co-opt the people who happen to be oppressed in the USA into the US imperialist adventures.
Okay, yes. All right, thank you for your comments. You bring to the fore something we have to delve into the coming weeks, which is how do you build social movements that really have impact on changing the power structures of society? How do you prevent that people come with good ideas but are marginalized? As you mentioned about Justice Jackson's and all the initiatives which were there, whenever there's a war, that people come with initiative of peace and are just pushed away. In other words, how is fundamental change possible anyway? In order to answer that question, we need to study revolutions. How do revolutions come about? What are they in terms of content, organization? What happens after revolutionary takes power? Where does it go? And ask ourselves, what lesson can we learn from that in order to help build social movements across the world? So I suggest we start next week with an analysis of the Russian Revolution, because that was in the 20th century the first and major revolution that was vested with an ideology and a vision of changing a new society. There were others before, the Haitian Revolution, French Revolutions. We can discuss all those too, but let's start with it because the Russian Revolution really changed the world. Next week we'll take up that issue. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. But we can go back and forth. What I mean is we can begin with the Russian Revolution, but if we're going to discuss revolution, we need to also look at the French Revolution, the Haitian revolutions,
right.
which are in our times has been very important. Also, it was very important for the Russian Revolution in a sense.
Sure.
But
especially
it's okay.
the French.
Let's begin. Yeah. Especially the French Revolution. Yeah, and also in a way the Haitian Revolution too was very important for the Russian Revolution, even though they never mention, even though they don't even, they're probably not even aware of how important it was for them. But anyway, let's begin with the Russian Revolution. That's a good point. I think that there is one thing that I see as a weakness is that because, and this I hope we take it into the conversation next week, is that because the idea of the Vanguard Party went into big crisis, we move into the, how can I say, many parts of the world, we move into a situation where people kind of were allergic to anything that have to do with political organization. And so I think that has been very, very counterproductive, because you need political organizations to really fight back in a strong way. And that has been shown over and over again in many parts of the world. You cannot do it just by social movement in themselves, okay? You need the social movement, but you also need political organizations that are strong, well-organized, and that can help out in the organization of the struggle to fight back. But that's a topic for next week.
Definitely. I mean, when we discuss a revolution, there will be many aspects which will not be covered in one session. And obviously the whole discussion of the party and the Vanguard Party will be a very important topic. and what it is,
Absolutely.
etc.,
Okay.
right?
Okay. That's an important discussion,
sure.
pending discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Take care. All
Take
right.
care.